Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention please as we go through the following safety instructions. Please make sure that all seats are in the upright position and plates are put away.
I'm excited about this today because you and I help people all the time. We teach people things all the time. And we don't really show up on a podcast or a conversation about teaching everyone and telling our story. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of my honor. You were my first person I sent the invite to be a guest.
I feel so honored for that.
Mm-hmm. I was like, Shaun, we got to do this. We got to do this. Okay, you know a lot of my paths, so I talk about finding the I. So behind the titles, the names, the doer of automation, what's underneath that title and that bio? Who are you?
Oh boy, many layers of evolution over the years. A lot of self doubting, I guess. Like there's with every layer that is kind of hardened on me, there's always that weak moment in there of you're not worthy, you don't deserve this, everybody's better than you, that type of stuff, which stems a lot back to my childhood, which I know we'll get into in this episode and over the years. So I think the biggest thing in me is that I like to uncover things. I like to explore, and sometimes when I do that, I don't like what I find. So, if anyone's ever been to counseling, it's like, oh, it's painful, but when you come out the other end, you're like, wow, that was refreshing.
Yeah.
Right. So.
Yeah, sometimes you have to unload, right? You said something really interesting, even just in the beginning, and I want to bring up what you wore the first time I ever met you in person. And you had a shirt on, the man, the myth, the legend.
Oh, yes.
And you have such a wonderful, crazy goofiness about you that I just love, that I absolutely love. And I saw you from before we first met to afterwards, this kind of transformation that you did, because you kind of held yourself to that title, that very professional piece. But then after our time together, when we sat here in the library, here is what we call it, right? The teacher's lounge, you changed. You absolutely changed. So what underneath made you change from the guy in the suit to the doer of cool automation?
It was so hard to just show up and, for lack of a better word, just act a role. Yeah. And try to be something that you thought that somebody in your position or in the industry you're in should look like, should act like, and it just didn't feel me. You said, like, I'm goofy, I have fun with things. My wife said, like, how does your brain do that? Because I'm very quick to come up with like catchy little songs and comebacks on things. And she's like, nobody's brain works like that. Like, it's just so interesting. And I'm like, it just comes naturally to me. But it doesn't mean that I'm unprofessional. Like I like to have fun and see the enjoyment in different situations.
Yeah. I think it's a really cool thing. And when we go through all this and we start to kind of cover who we are, and the show is called Wisdom in the Whispers, and it's the stuff that we don't really say out loud. So what's one whisper, what's one line or a lesson that you carry around with you, but you haven't said it out loud to anyone?
Um,
Hmm.
I think the biggest one, I mean, I've never said it to anyone till now. You got the
Yeah,
breaking
no,
scoop
look at
here,
me asking the
right?
gall.
And I'm sure everybody says the same thing, is that, you like you shouldn't be successful.
Mm,
Like you, and I don't know what it is. I mean, I know deep down that I have the skills, I have the drive, I have all this. Um, but it's like why does a small town, South Shore, Nova Scotia boy, like why would he be worthy to have this, who grew up in a single parent family? And I mean, you hear a lot of the stories of people that overcome that and everything, but it's like maybe that's not my destiny. Maybe that's not my what it was, charted for me.
mm,
The divine plan and
mm,
everything. But yeah, there's so many things that come up where I'm like, I just doubt what I do, right?
mm,
And or I get really good at something, and then when I look at it, I'm like, I can't really make that the business, right?
mm,
That's and for me, it's always the stuff that I'm passionate about, right? So, I go and I learn something, and then I'll go off in this tangent, and I'm like living such enjoyment, but I'm like, this is not the business. Like, I can't make money out of this, right?
mm,
Or at least I don't. All right, and I always think like you need to have this big plan that when you retire, you've got all this money in the bank and that type of stuff. And there's fear, right? I'm at this age now where I'm like I fear death, right?
mm.
Like I'm not ready, right?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
every time I go and get blood work done, and they're like, something's a little bit elevated, I'm like, I'm dying, right?
Right.
Right? Like, I'm not ready, don't take me yet,
Yeah.
kind of thing,
Stay
like,
away from
right?
Google. Yep.
Right. So that's, being 45, I still feel like I'm 25, right?
That's
But
strange. Yeah.
not when I wake up in the morning, I don't. But
Yeah.
so yeah,
Strange.
there's a ton of self doubt in there, and then it's always up and down because you do something great for a
Mhm.
client and they have great success with it, and you're like, I'm on the top of the world, like I helped you with this,
Yep.
and then you get left in the silence to yourself, and then the voices come back,
The voices come back.
and you're like, oh, okay, right.
Yeah.
In I mean, my business has always been ebb and flow, and
That's the way
you do
business is.
really good, and then you got to do the work, and then you're coming back, and it's
Yeah.
seasonal too. So
Yeah.
yeah, I guess that's the big whispers is like you're not good enough, and that
Mhm.
plays out in like tons of stuff every time I go to networking events and stuff like that. I'm like, I want to come up and talk to this person, but I'm like, they're just gonna be like, who are you? Right? Like that type of thing.
It's the weirdest thing of that, and we know it. We know all the answers, right?
Hmm.
They're just people too. Period. Right?
Yeah.
They're just people too. And so many times we get so caught up in it. So I always find it extremely interesting that everything changes with a thought. So we can tell ourselves all these horrible things. We can go down this badness rabbit hole.
Hmm.
So why can't we do and go down the goodness rabbit hole? So if you're going down the badness rabbit hole, you justify it as I'm being responsible, I'm checking everything, I'm looking at it, I'm being cautious, I'm being responsible. And if you go down the goodness of daydreaming and awesome stuff, it's like, okay, you're unrealistic. How dare you do this? That can't happen.
Hmm.
But it's the
Yeah.
same damn thing, just a different outcome and emotion. So it's really interesting, right? How all of us go through this. And it's kind of like a mental checkpoint you have to do. So it's not that whole process, it's how you come out of it and how you go through it, right? What's on
Hmm.
the other end. It's always interesting to see that.
Yeah.
I call this the lump bumps and triumphs. And there's always this lump in your throat when you want to change or do something, right? The come through that we were talking about and going right to the beginning. There was something, probably a lump in your throat when you decided to become an entrepreneur or something had to change in your life. What was that lump and where did it show up?
Hmm. my story of becoming an entrepreneur was one that I don't know if it was done out of protecting myself.
Mm.
Um, because I grew up, alcohol was in the family. I lived with my mom and my grandparents, and my grandfather died when I was younger. Um, my mom and grandmother would always drink on Fridays and Saturday nights, and they get in fights and that type of stuff. And I was always, I'd be the kid that would just go to his room.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like I was being punished. It was like that was my safe place. I was very much, self-motivated, very heavily involved in school and everything like that. And I saw an entrepreneurship conference poster at school on the wall, and I asked the guidance counselor, "What is this? What is this word? What does it mean?" And she's like, "It's somebody that runs their own business." I believe that's how she explained it. And it was at that point that I realized I actually grew up in an entrepreneurial family. Like my grandfather had a TV repair business. My mom had a craft store in the house. My grandmother retired as a bakery manager, and we converted that craft shop to a cake shop.
Mhm.
So it was always there, and it now is like I understand. So I
Yeah.
went to this and came back motivated. It was 2 days at Dalhousie University in Halifax with 300 other youth from around Atlantic Canada.
Mhm.
We got to hear from people that started their own business. I'm like, this is what I want to do. So I started a DJ company at 17. Borrowed $2,000 from the BOG, the Bank of Grandma. Under the terms of every dance I did, I gave her $50 back,
Mm.
no interest, which was great.
That's amazing.
And started in high school. Can I DJ the junior high dances? And then it got
Yeah.
to the senior high, and the school would pay me. And then I got out to community, and so over those years, that was my my evolution into that. And then I
Mm.
went to broadcasting school and got my diploma in television production and started to do video production. But throughout those years, there was still that motivation of um like the only one that's going to give me what I want is me, right?
Mm.
Nobody, like, I don't deserve to be handed anything, and I have to work for it. And you know that relationship with my mom after my grandmother passed and everything was still not the greatest one. I knew she loved me and everything, and I had a lot of resentment over those years. And it took counseling to help me with that. And it wasn't till um, basically my best friend's father passed away, and he lived across the street, that I went to his funeral and like heard all the great things that they were saying about him. And
Mm.
I was like, what would people say about me? Like if I was him in that, like if I had passed away. So I started to think about that and basically just like cried the whole drive home. And it was in that trip down that I had written this letter to my mom, just basically laying out all my feelings of my childhood, things of the hurt of her never coming to any of my sporting events, which I longed for. Like every other kid's parents were there, and she would never come.
Yeah.
And in the end, maybe it was she felt embarrassed or how people would judge her because they knew. I mean, obviously, people knew a
Mhm.
small town.
Yeah.
And I let she wasn't home, right? So I left that funeral and drove to her house, and I was going to give it to her, and she wasn't there. So I left on the table, and um, never heard from her for 2 weeks. Like,
Mm.
and I lived like a half hour away. Um, and then the phone rang, and she's like, basically, I got your letter, and it took me some time to understand it and the hurt and everything, but she basically apologized for that.
Mhm.
Um, and to me, that was a moment of lifting a weight off, right? It's the whole like I forgive you, I never forget kind of thing. But the resentment was gone in there.
Mm.
And I knew at that point, like there was something that changed in me, that was kind of connected those pieces that were there. So to me, growing up, like being in that situation, like I would never invite friends over. Like I was ashamed of that like,
Mm.
what would people think? Like
Yeah.
all that.
Mom's chopping or whatever. Yep.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
mom's not
So
making cookies like Johnny's mom.
yeah.
Yep.
So how I position my, like when I look at being an entrepreneur, it is my safe place. It is the place that I control. So even to this day, or looking back at any personal relationship, when things start to get stressful, I dive back into work because I have control there. Um, and that's just the way that I have been. And you know, if I need to learn something, I will go and do it. Right. I'm like, asking for help is a
Mm.
very hard thing. Right. Growing up, it's like, you know, and people have said like you're really hard to get gifts for because anytime you need something, you just get it. Like you just do it or get it. Like we don't know what to do for you. And I'm an active service person. Like that is my love language for other people is like it fulfills me if I can go do something for you.
Yep.
Right. I don't even want to tell you I'm doing it. I'll just do it and disappear. I'm like Batman.
Yep.
Right. And that's it. So it's not the recognition of it. Sure, like if they find out about it and they say, you know, thank you, yeah, it feels good, but that's not the purpose of it.
Yeah, that's to be
It's
human.
in there, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the biggest thing. And to this day, there are certain triggers that hit me if I'm out somewhere and you know, somebody's smoking and they've had alcohol and there's that scent that I'm
That's
brought right back to my childhood, and I'm just like, whoa, right? Because she smoked too, and like to this day, those are things that come back to me.
you and I both work with entrepreneurs all the time, and I go kind of deeply into the psychology and the structure and everything. And it's very interesting how we all have a very common profile,
Hmm.
and all of us are missing. And so I find it just really interesting because of what you do for a living, what you chose to do for a living. Growing up without going into a therapy session, and I'm not a therapist, I'm not licensed, I just read a lot. So there's my disclaimer. But thousands and thousands of hours I've coached and I've worked with entrepreneurs, we're all missing the structure point in our behavioral evolution as a human being. We're missing that structure.
Hmm.
And so it's so funny. As I'm choking, we're all missing that structure point. And so when we look at our businesses, everybody, that part that holds us all back is the structure component.
Hmm.
And I find it incredibly interesting that your choice where you are today and where I watch you fly and you just get excited is structure, implementing
Hmm.
structure for people because you know what it's like to not be able to have control of your thing.
Hmm.
So when we talk about what we do for a living and who we serve and the lumps, the bumps, and the tramps and the journey to getting there, this is what I mean when we say our ideal client is ourselves and what we've
Hmm.
gone through. So it's very interesting to see this and hearing that story, your stories, just about you didn't have someone to rely on as you should have.
Hmm.
And we put this, call it a wall, call it whatever. Sometimes I'm thankful for my crappy story because it made me into the person I am. I had a choice.
100%.
I had a choice. It's really interesting. So thank you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you very much for sharing it. Because
And
when
there's a little more to it
yeah,
there in growing up, and if I'm okay to share this part of
yeah,
it,
go right ahead.
but like growing up, you know, single parent family, never had a dad in the picture,
Yep.
and was always told your dad didn't want you, he left, like he just
Mhm.
left you behind, right? So I had this anger of like, fine, if he doesn't want me, I don't want him.
Go on him.
But
Yep.
there was a little part in there that's like, I want a dad, right? But the brave side stood up and kind of defended me and was like, I don't want him. Anyway,
Mm, yep.
so, you know, fast forward to, 12 years ago, um, I was, my mom was going through some issues medically with having pain and people just giving her pills from the hospital and never really diagnosing what it was. And, thought it was cancer and all this kind of stuff. And then my son was, my girlfriend at the time was pregnant with my son, so that was happening, and my mother was excited about having a grandchild and all this stuff. And I got a text one morning from a number that I didn't know, and it's like, "Hey, son." And I was like, "What? Who is this?" And he's like, "Your father." I was like, "My father?" Question mark. He's like, "Yeah, the one that changed your diapers when you were younger." So anyway, we started talking, and he explained who he was, and his name was David, and my middle name is David. So over the years, I'd always ask that, and my mom would say, "Well, it's just a name I liked." Okay. So he's like, your mom and I, there's this big story behind this and everything. So um, I'd like to do DNA testing. So we did it. We found he's in Cape Breton and I'm in the Valley of Nova Scotia, and I found a company that would do it. He went to his hospital, got the blood work. Anyway, it was a match. So here I am, like 30. I don't know what the math would be, but like 30 to 45, so 34 ish, 30, whatever. That's why I'm not an accountant. Um, um, so here I am, like my son's gonna be born.
Yeah.
My mom's going through trying to figure out why she's sick, and here's this guy who's now confirmed my father. So I go in and I meet him for the first time, and let me tell you, I drove like an hour and a half to meet him at a restaurant, and the nervousness of like, who is this person, right? Like you're meeting a stranger who is actually your father, right? And I'm sure other people have been through this, but it was great because now I've had this, and then once it was confirmed, he's like, now I have to tell my wife. Okay, so anyway, so in that point, my mother's journey, and I was helping her with this, was, they found out that she had an inflamed gallbladder, so I had to take her to the hospital in Halifax to have that taken out. And so we took her the next day, and she went in for surgery, and we came back at the 4 hours later, and they're like, just she woke up and she was a little confused, so we're just gonna sedate her again. So anyway, this was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and like 4 o'clock came, 5 o'clock came, 6 o'clock came, and nothing. Like, and they're like, we're just running some other tests to see what's going on. And it wasn't until like 11 o'clock at night, and they came in. They said they put us in a private room, and they said the neurologist, the surgeon, and somebody else was there. And they came in. They told me that when they resedated her and scanned her head because she was confused, they found 2 bleeding brain tumors, and that she wasn't coming out of that. So here it was the next day, because I was exhausted, mentally distraught from this. They kept her there that night, and I put her in the ICU, and I was the power of attorney that was just had that done 2 weeks ago. Prior to that, here I had to come back the next day and give the okay to turn off the life support.
Yeah.
Right. So she missed meeting her grandson by about 6 weeks. Right. So here you look at 2 months of time that you are going to be a father. You meet your father and you lose your mother. Right. So that was a big collision of life events that were there, right?
Yeah.
So that was like I don't know how, like I would never want anyone to go through that. Like that was the hardest thing.
It's try not to cry. So thank you. It's
You and me both.
Right? It is so hard, and these stories are so important to tell. So I thank you for sharing it, because it's not the stuff that we see online and the success stories and you have a great business and you've been around for 20 years or whatever. There are so many pieces and parts that have evolved through your life and made you who you are. I trust you with all my heart, with all my clients. I trust you with my name, with my reputation, with everything, because a lot of it has to do with what you have made it through and who it's made you into.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, these hard things are hard. And I love that you say that you had a therapist too, because man, we confuse our friends. Friends are therapy. They are not therapists. Friends are
Right.
therapy. Right. So like, it's so important. We feel like we don't have anybody to talk to or our friends. Well, we're not supposed to talk to them about these things.
Mm-hmm.
Let them know that something's happening, but go through it. But wow. You said something really interesting too about the parent and that I want them, but they didn't want me, and kind of all that stuff going through your head when you were going to go see your dad. That also kind of triggers and goes into our how we work in our life and in our business too. We have put these
Mhm,
guardrails up too. So we have this parent that, or this, this father figure, because I have the same story. My father disappeared when I was 10. You want them around, but they don't want you, and you're like, they're the adult, they should be doing
mhm,
this. Why is the kid, like, you play all these things, it's their responsibility. And I find myself pulling that into my business life too, right?
mhm,
Like, I can see someone's success, or I can help, or I can do all this kind of stuff. I want them, but if you're not good enough to want me, go
mhm.
away. It's really
Yeah,
interesting.
and there's the uncovering of the truth, right? And
Yes.
there's always the your story, my story, and the truth in the middle, right? Which again is
Yep.
one of your wisdom points that's there.
Yep.
And getting to know my dad, in that first year was eye opening because I got to hear his side of
So,
what actually happened.
yeah.
And what I've learned over the years of growing up and hearing my mother tell me stories of situations, especially when there was alcohol involved, they would always shift. Right,
Yeah.
it was never the consistent story, right?
Yeah.
That was there. It was always about what she wanted out of it. And so come to find out what actually happened, and this was confirmed by several other people that were knew of this too later, was that he was, I was born, he was 100% convinced that I was his son and everything, and he was like so involved when I was young. And my grandmother, when they were drinking one night, basically told him that you're not Sean's father, this other person is, which was his best friend at the time. And he just like got distraught and like just left and never came back because they were best friends and he didn't know that there was unfaithfulness and stuff, all that stuff happening. But what was interesting was that that again was another thing that I always attached to alcohol, was like the alcohol caused that,
Yeah.
right? The alcohol robbed me of that relationship, right? So and just coming to find out too, and reading letters, like my mom's, and this was another thing that developed over the year when I was trying to find him, before he actually came, because I went on a journey before to try to find him. Um, that my mom's cousin gave me a letter that she had written her while she was in the hospital, saying she gave birth to a girl when she was 18. She was 20 when she gave birth to me. So, and she had to give this girl up for adoption.
Hmm.
And it was because my grandmother said she wanted a grandson and not a granddaughter, and if she brought a girl home, she had no place to live. So now I have another layer in there of like, if it's also my dad's daughter, which he claims he knows nothing of this, but I read the letter
Mhm.
in her handwriting, there's a potential half or full sister somewhere out there in the world. And growing up as a kid, every time between probably age 7 to 9, when I was asked, what do I want for my birthday or for Christmas, I always asked for an older sister.
Poor sister.
That's what I wanted. Right. So I don't know, the world has this weird way of connecting these pieces later when you look back on
Yeah.
it. Um, and to this day, when I'm working with someone and we have something lined up and they're like, just something's happening in life today and I can't be there for that, 100% completely understanding. Like I never like, how dare you
Mhm.
stand me up in that type of meeting? Like, and that's the other reciprocal thing too. Like life will happen to me.
Yeah.
And you know, that's just the way that I'm understanding of things. But there's still so many unanswered questions um in my life that I'm like, do I want to dive even further to try to find that or whatever? And now this is also like having me want it because I have a son now who's 10.
Yeah.
10. Where'd the time go?
S-
And I'm like,
Seventeen.
now I'm like trying to live two roles here. There's the being the dad that I always wanted but never had
Mm.
role.
Yeah.
And then there's living the childhood that I wanted, right? But never had. Like, I remember a Father's Day years ago where I posted a photo online of Tim Allen from Home Improvement because I grew up watching that show, and I'm like, I would love to have him as the dad, right?
Right.
So I lived through the TV dads of the 80s and 90s,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Hmm.
Right. So that's and my dad, come to find out, has a construction company and builds homes and is very handy, right? So again, weird
These
connection.
little serendipitous, the universe speaks. It all does. If
I
you stop
know.
to listen, it speaks, my friend. It really does.
Yeah.
It really does. Yeah. Yeah. When you're going through all this, because I think you and I both have that shared belief of we don't change, we just evolve, right? Where we've always, with as a core essence of who we are as people and stuff like that. The last iteration, or the 4.5 version of Shaun that came through, like what did that look like when you were standing in that next version of yourself, the next change? What did it look like to you?
Oh wow. I
Sir.
mean, there's been many versions over the years.
Like even the latest one. That's why I'm being a smart ass and saying the
Yeah.
4.5, because you're 45.
Yeah,
So
the latest one again like took me
Yeah.
by surprise, because I went through like my now wife, like when it was like 6 years that we've known each other, and a lot of this trauma history patterns, whatever you want to call it, surfaced over those years in me. Fear of commitment, and which was not really a fear of commitment, it was a fear of losing control, which control for me that I found in my business was the thing that I had lost early on. So that was that. And there was a point where we broke up a couple times, and we went to there was a point where it was like it was the end, like it was over. And I'd started going to church with her because she grew up in the Baptist church system her whole life, and I was always like, I never had that element of my life growing up. I went with my grandmother when I was really young, and it was just, to me, it was a place where old people stood and sat down, stood up, and sang songs you didn't know. That was church to me, right? So I would go and early on to just support her in that, and she wanted me to go, and I would find every reason to distract myself. I would be looking at the lighting and the technology and all this stuff, and zoned out from it. So anyway, there was a church kayaking trip planned one weekend, and we had broken up the weekend before, and I was like, I'm not going to go. She's like, I think you should go. So it turned out that I had offered one of our pastors. I was like, okay, again, me, the act of service. I'm like, hey, if people can't get their kayaks there, I got a truck, I got a trailer, I can bring them all down and whatever. And he's like, great, no problem. And then there was nobody that needed that. So he's like, can I catch a ride with you? So here we are. We drove down to this place, and we just started talking, and I just like lost it crying on the way, talking about stuff. And it was all about, when we got there like 20 minutes before anyone showed up, and it was on the side of this river. And I was talking about, like, how do you ask for forgiveness in life, and the loneliness. And there was a point in me like that week where I was like, I can't do anything more myself. Like, there's nothing that I have control to do anything more of. And it wasn't like, thoughts of self-harm or anything. It was just like, I need help of something that I can't see. And I was like, how do you do this? Like, what do you do? And he's like, well, you pray and ask, God for forgiveness and all this stuff. And I was like, okay. And he's like, you want to do it now? And here we are in my truck, like me, just like tears, just like sobbing through this prayer. And I never prayed before in my life. Right. And he's leading me in this. And the moment it finished, there was this weight that lifted off me. And I looked over in my passenger side mirror, and this little bird landed on the mirror. And he looked at me, and I'm not making this up, this is 100% true. It looked at me, I looked at it, and it flew away. And then, so we got out, and this weight was off me, and then we got in the water. There was like 15 people that came, and we paddled this 45 minutes down this river, and literally, like, the location we got out at is actually called Paradise. And that was a monumental change in my life, because it was like, now I have this sense of bigger purpose in me. And, just coming back to any community event or going to church, like it was the change of when you walk into a situation, your head's down because like I don't really want to be here, to
Mhm.
my head's up and I'm looking and connecting
I'm
with
here.
people, and
Yeah.
people are here, and everybody is accepting and equal, and they know everybody has different stories. Some have been through harder ones than others, but in the end it's all about living a life with good people who want to do good things, and that was the biggest change that was there.
That's such a wonderful, and again, right, the triumph.
Hmm.
We think it needs to be this big, huge explosion or riches or I don't know, something that other people put monetary value to, like big value, societal value to. But like the triumph is that inner thing for yourself, right? When you can walk in a room and hold your head high and say, I'm here. And I love so much. Sorry, I might cry. Yeah, water's my church. I've said that to you many times. Water's my church. And it's such a really interesting thing. Anything monumental or a big change I've ever gone through has been by the water.
Hmm.
It's always very cleansing, or whatever the metaphor may be. Even when you and I are laughing about AI and becoming human, we're talking about don't pee in the pool, don't wreck the water, right? But it's so interesting to hear. And I love that story of yours because it's even just the stereotypical thing. You're a big dude, right? You're 6'5", 6'4", 6'5",
6'4".
6'4", right? You've got some presence, right? You've got some presence. You're this big dude. You work in a lot of tech, right? All this kind of stuff. And it's this really interesting answer to boys do cry
Hmm.
and girls do climb trees, right? So there's this total dichotomy that we're looking at on each side of we're people, we're humans, and we're made of all these wonderful things. So I think it's such a beautiful thing that you shared that, and that triumph kind of coming through it all, because you've gone through a lot. You've gone
Hmm.
through a lot. And you're an amazing gentleman. You really are. There's words that come up as you were talking. Control came up a lot. I'm
Hmm.
trying not to coach. Do you know how hard it is not to coach through this? It's like, shut up, Kim, shut up, Kim. But you said the word control a lot.
Hmm.
And control is a very interesting word. So what does control mean to you?
Control means to me that I have the ability to either determine, or determine the outcome, or know what the next step is. It's the ability to, like coming to faith, and the biggest part was believing that your future, your purpose on this earth is not something that you get to choose, that it,
Mm,
it has been defined. And that to me was a hard thing to overcome, because I'm like, everything that I put in my life, like every decision I made from starting my business over the years, was like, I'm choosing this, I am charting my own course. And then suddenly life would happen, something would go wrong, and you're like, oh, okay, maybe I did something wrong,
mm,
right? And then I fought with this for years, of like, I wish I never had to go through this. And then I look back to the blessings of having the son that I have, and where I'm at today, where I'm going to be tomorrow, and all that stuff. I wouldn't be in this spot if all those things didn't happen, right? So the resentment has no weight to me anymore.
yeah.
Um, it's all a part of who we've become, and why that's there. So that was that was a big thing.
Hmm.
Yeah.
There's
So
that
that, yeah,
saying.
that control was like, and it's never like I want to control other people.
No.
There's not that control. It's just that when things are left to the wishy-washy, like, I'm just gonna walk out the door and whatever happens happens kind of thing, is a
Mhm.
tough thing to do. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And
Very tough.
yeah.
It's very tough. It's
And it's those feelings of like, something's telling me inside not to go into this business, not to take on this project.
Yep.
But then there's a part of the empathy of like, they really need me. They need that help. And, I know they don't have, much money and whatever. I'm going to do goodwill and all this stuff. And then suddenly it becomes a disaster. Right. And you're like, I knew I shouldn't have. So
Yep.
it's trusting those instincts and those feelings. It's like, I'm not controlling it. I'm, so it's still, I
Mm,
still don't understand the control part,
yeah.
but I think that's part of the fun.
Yeah. I think so too. I think having your conversations with yourself and really looking at stuff and analyzing, and it's a new level of intelligence that we've been talking about through, and not very many people actually have that inner dialogue in a way that wouldn't lock them up in a little white room with a white coat and padded walls, but in the way of that part of like really having critical thinking and being aware and looking at stuff. And control's a protection behavior. It really is. It's a protection behavior. It goes back to the childhood, all that kind of stuff. We weren't able to rely on someone before, the lack of structure. And we do that same thing in our business. And then you and I both do it, right? We let people in because we're controlling so much. I'm like, oh, I feel like such a bad person. Maybe I'll give them the help, or I can get through them, or I can, because we want to help people. And it bites us in the ass every single time. There has never been a situation in my 30 years of directly business development coaching where I gave someone a chance and it worked out. It's never happened. I wish it would have, but it's never happened. Right? You have to buy into each other in each situation, because you were also talking about something. I just want to circle back to it before we kind of wrap up for today. And it was that passion stuff too, right? So when you're going through those lumps and bumps and triumphs and you're going through those discovery models, and I get a lot of flack when I say, stop leading by passion. Stop letting passion dictate to where you go in yourself or your business. It's about profit. And money's not evil. It's who's behind the money. So if you look at something and you have the right mindset and you're making the clear decisions about what is profitable, not passion, we're all passionate people, so it'll back it up anyways. And then that whole part of then we actually will have purpose as an outcome. So when you see someone who's living a life that you admire, they lead by profit. They back it up by the passions. They find the passion because we've been around for a long time and we can do lots of things, right? And then we actually have the result of purpose. So kind of looking through the lumps, bumps, and triumphs by looking at it, when you hit that recipe, you're in a different place. Yep. Yep.
Yep.
So there's a question that a lot of people ask about what would you tell your younger self? But I want to flip it around. Okay.
Okay.
So young, since Cameron's, you're your son. Sorry, I said your son's name. Sorry.
All right.
Okay. I was like,
I don't hide it either. People know.
Okay. Well, sometimes people hide their kids in their faces, and I didn't ask permission, so thank you. So your 10-year-old boy, 10-year-old Shaun's hanging out there. Okay. And he's going to have a conversation with you, and he's going to say something. And he asks you the question, all this is worth it because that you've gone through lumps, bumps, and triumphs. What would you tell that younger self?
There's a good one. I think all this is worth it because when life comes to the end and you're at that road to move on, you will have a better understanding of who you are, and you never want to get to the point where life is over and you still don't know who you are, right? Even though you may in the moment think that you aren't doing something right, or you have hurt somebody or whatever, you had a purpose in that moment. And maybe it wasn't the right relationship, maybe it wasn't the right job, maybe it wasn't the right event, whatever that is, but you want to have that story. And that's like anybody that you meet that is like, this person is interesting, this person is like memorable, they're the ones that have the real stories.
Yeah, they
right
are.
And not to be cliche with a metaphor, but every day you're writing another page in your storybook, right? But that is it. I'm leaving this interview today to go down to the church and record an interview with an older gentleman who's going to tell his story. Last week we did it with a lady who was almost 90, who had been in our church for over 60 some years. But it was like, I wish I could just keep talking to her. Right. That was the thing. So it is worth it, because I think if you lived a life that was absent of all these hurdles, these ups and downs, it would be boring. Right? So boring. Like if everything was just handed to you, like you see these people that can buy anything, like they're rich, and our kids see this in watching YouTube, and they've got these mansions and they're buying all this stuff, and I'm like, where's the challenge? And like, that would get so boring so fast.
They're miserable. They're absolutely
Yeah.
miserable. They really are.
Mm-hmm. Right? Because like when you're absent of the things, what do you have left? You.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And then you are forced, or I'm gonna say forced is the best word, but you are privileged with the opportunity to connect with another human, because that's the natural toolbox that you have left with you. Right?
Yeah. And if you can't connect with yourself first, my God, Lord help you. Like it's this really interesting part of why I have that argument about it's not find the why, it's find the I. Right?
Mm-hmm.
We need to be selfish in such a term. And I think that definition, it has a bad definition, but it is that whole entire part of really truly being honest with yourself of what you want, who you want to be, and be very vocal about it, and not be ashamed of wanting to be that person, instead of trying to contort ourselves into an identity we think everyone else thinks that we need to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's so incredible to watch. The last little part that I'm going to say, I'm going to turn that around just a little bit too, because they do ask, what would you tell your younger self? So the last part that I'm going to leave you with is, what would your younger self say to you today?
What would my I think it was the thing that I was looking for growing up, and that I would want them to say. And I'm sure if they had the wisdom of it, that they would say that they were proud of me for not giving up.
Proud of you too. We grow up to be that adult that protects our younger self, would be the adult our younger self would run to for help. That's what we do.
Absolutely.
It's awesome. It's absolutely. My friend, amazing. We'll have more chats and conversations like this, but I love you and I admire you so much. And I've been beside you for a couple of years, and I cannot wait for the more. So thank you.
Many great things to come.
As we begin our approach, please make sure that all seats are in the upright position and trays are put away.